Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 220.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because you're going to learn some things in a completely different way. You've heard me talk more than once about things like investor identity and being able to understand that when you're in real estate investing, and more importantly, business, where you start isn't necessarily where you stay. You should grow over the course of your career. You should change what you have an appetite for today probably won't be something that you like tomorrow. You know, some of you probably like Oreos when you were really, really young, but today you can't stand them. That's one example. Although, if you want to send me some Oreos, I'm totally down for that. So just understand that you will grow and should as your career grows and you grow. All of those things should happen for you. And today's guest is absolutely no exception to that. He is none other than David Campbell. Many of you may know him from hassle-free cash flow investing. He is a market cycle investor, private lender, and has been someone I have known actually for a number of years. He was the first guy I ever ran into that said he was going to buy a post office. I was like, excuse me, you can do that? I thought that was pretty interesting. But there's a question and many questions that we're going to be able to catch up with and ask him today because he has 15 years worth of experience, hyper approachable. You know those guys who know what they know, but also are still easy to talk to? That's who you're going to be introduced today. He was a band director. Now we can call him a guy who's been involved in one capacity or another with over $1 billion of real estate transactions. Help me welcome Mr. David Campbell. David, you there?
Jay, I'm so happy to be here with you and your audience.
Thank you for taking the time from all of the interesting going-ons that you are up to at this moment. Now, before we get too far down that path, most people know the first question I'm going to ask you, and I would love for you to answer because it's going to help people understand a little bit about who you are. And as you may know, I tend to look at, today's entrepreneurs at a lot like yesterday's superheroes, Batman, Superman, Robin, I guess he's still, even though he's a sidekick, he's still super in some way. So he counts. And before all of those people were somehow special and dressed up in, tights and capes and used their special ability to improve the lives of other individuals, they were kind of just, normal people until something happened to them. Something changed on the inside, and then they decided to use their powers for good. It means they have an origin story. So what I would really like to know is, before all of the deals that you've done, before the investing, before, the syndicating, before the raising capital, before the private lending, before understanding market cycles and all that stuff, we want to know, who is David Campbell?
Well, Jay, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I remember going door to door and collecting cans and newspapers from all my neighbors and taking them to the school fundraising project. And then once the school fundraiser was over, my neighbors were still saving cans and newspapers for me. And I thought, that's cool. Let me take them in and cash them in for myself.
Yes.
And so then, I just went out and started trying to invent things that I could sell and mowing lawns for neighbors. And if I saw somebody's lawn that was overgrown, I'd go mow it first and then knock on their door and see if they'd pay me for work that I'd done. Because I figured if I knocked on their door and said, could I mow your lawn, there's a chance they would say no. But if I did the work first, who's going to tell a 12-year-old boy that they're not going to give him $5 for the lawn they already mowed?
Wow. That's closing the sale. I like it. Keep going. This is good.
So, life just grew. And I remember when I was 18, I got a job working at an income tax office. And, my goal at that time was to be a high school band teacher. And I had one of my middle school teachers come in, and she gave me all the information to do her tax return. And at first I thought, here I'm 18 years old. And in 3 weeks, this woman taught me how to prepare taxes. And I'm doing this tax return of a teacher who clearly was lacking some financial skill set because, here at 18, I was doing something that a grown-up, should have been able to do. And then at the end, I stapled her return together and gave it to her, and like, okay, well, you're going to pay, 30% of your income in taxes. And I thought, ooh, even at 18 years old, I thought that's not very, it's not a good plan, right? And she didn't make that much money. And then, lo and behold, the next week, this guy came in, and it took me about 2 weeks. I was working part-time, so it took me 2 weeks part-time to data entry this guy's gigantic tax return. The guy owned shopping centers, he owned apartment buildings, and then at the end, like the CPA I was working for, did all of the work. I just did the data entry. And then at the end, I print out this giant tax return and they staple it together. And I knew this guy made a ton of money. And I gave him his return. And my job is to say, and you need to write a check to the IRS for $0. And I thought, how is this possible that this guy owns so much property and so many businesses, and yet his tax bill was zero when my middle school teacher was in the week before and had to pay, over 30% of her income in taxes. So I asked my boss, I said, how is this possible? And she said, well, it's the magic of earn, spend, and then tax on what's left over. And it's also the magic of depreciation from real estate. So if you can figure out through owning businesses where you can earn, spend, and tax, and then get depreciation to shelter whatever's left over, your tax bill is going to be really low, and you can make a bunch of money in the process. And her advice to me was, the very first time I got a professional paycheck, go and buy a 2-bedroom piece of real estate. Go get a 2-bedroom piece of real estate. And while I'm young, I can live in one bedroom and I can rent out the other bedroom. And then I've turned my primary residence into a portion of a rental property, and I get the income to help me buy a bigger piece of real estate than I might otherwise be able to afford. So I did that. I bought a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo in Southern California in 1999, and I got a roommate. And at that time, I was only making about $30,000 a year teaching high school band. And at the end of the first year, I looked at my checking account, and it was the same as it was at the beginning of the year, which was zero. And then I looked at my balance sheet, and sure enough, this $140,000 condo that I had bought in Southern California in 1 year went up $30,000. And suddenly I had a net worth. And then the next year, the same thing happened. My salary was about the same. And at the end of my second year of teaching, my checking account was still, you guessed it, $0. And my condo had gone up another $30,000. I had a $60,000 equity on my balance sheet that I hadn't had before. And here I am, young, and I thought, this is awesome. I've got the real estate itch, and I just started studying as much as I could, and that became my new passion. How would I become financially independent through real estate? And at the time, my goal was, if I could buy one house every 2 years, then after 10 years, I'd have, after 20 years, I'd have to have 10 properties. And I figured out that would probably be enough for me to retire on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my plan, 20-year retirement plan. And at age 24 years old, that was pretty good. I was going to be retired at 44. And lo and behold, I met this beautiful woman, and to compress that time frame, I said, gosh, I need to get married, and I can't have roommates anymore.
Right.
So
they frown on that. Spouses typically don't want the roommate, but yes.
Yeah. I was lucky to even get a girlfriend with a roommate, but it all worked out. And so anyway, I just put that plan into supercharge, right? And how could I compress time frames and do as many deals as I could, as fast as I could? And so about 12 deals later and 6 years. So 12 deals in 6 years, I was age 30. And those 12 deals were enough. They were enough to put me out of the rat race. And so instead of doing one deal every 2 years, I did 2 deals a year for 6 years. And at age 30, I was able to retire from my day job And a huge, teaching moment there is if you play the game cash flow, the cash flow board game with Robert Kiyosaki, when your expenses are low, it's very easy to get out of the rat race.
Right.
And that's where I was. I can, be proud that I was a millionaire at age 30, but more importantly, I was living very frugally. And so the income that I was getting from my rental property covered my frugal expenses at the time.
Right.
And so here I am, age 30, able to retire from my day job, owned my time, and I started a development company. And we started with doing condo conversion, and then we started going into home building, and that expanded into development, medical office development, resort development, land development, winery development. And that was a lot of great ways to force equity and to make a bunch of money quickly. But at the end of the day, it was a lot of hassle.
I know nothing of what you speak.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
Jay, you do a lot of syndication and put groups of people together, and you're giving them the opportunity to invest hassle free while you take on the hassle as a syndicator.
Right.
And I thought, okay, this is really good, but now that I've put together enough deals where I own my time in a more abundant fashion, how do I become even more passive? And so then I started exploring triple net leased properties.
Yep.
And that was great. And there's fewer toilets per square foot. Own a shopping center, a net lease shopping center, but still, it's still a lot of work. And so I started with this concept of hassle-free cash flow. And how do I get more cash flow with less effort, more cash flow with less hassle, more cash flow with less risk? And that really led me to private lending. And how could I use my capital to make loans with, help other entrepreneurs, help other investors get the seed capital that they need to succeed? And, I know that you're always looking for ways to add value to a marketplace and to find that gap in that marketplace where you can add value. And for me, I look at a lot of people who their lending situation, it makes common sense that they would be a good borrower. They've got good income, they've got a big down payment, they're buying a property in a good location, but because their credit score or their credit profile is not bankable, then they don't fit in that small, narrow box of the bank. They can't go borrow money at 4 or 5% from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. They've got to go to the private marketplace to borrow money. And there's a big gap, right? Money from banks is 4 or 5%, but as soon as you're non-bankable, bam, that interest rate's 10%.
Right. Well, and what's really interesting about what you're saying is when you learn to master the earn, spend, and tax and use depreciation to your advantage, your tax return says you have no money, which the banker looks at and goes, you have no money. Now you're also not. So it's like, it's a really interesting situation that you're describing. But yes, I see the unique pocket of individuals that you have the ability to serve.
And so we go to the marketplace and we look for, common sense loans, right? And my common sense approach to lending is, am I profitable if they pay me? Meaning, is the interest rate high enough to get my attention and beat out other opportunity costs for my money? And secondly, am I profitable if they don't pay me?
Right.
Because in a loan, there's really only two outcomes: you're going to get your money back, or you won't. And if I'm doing an unsecured loan and someone doesn't pay me back, you're really kind of just out of luck. And good luck, right? Trying to collect that money. It's highly unlikely that you will. You just say, please pay me, and please pay me.
Right. Well, and these are the things that the private world tends to deal with. I've actually begun to step into that. Is for the first time in my career of learning how to navigate those particular waters, but they're all forms of cash flow, because that's what I hear from a lot of your career is, well, I used to do cash flow this way. Then I said I wanted to do cash flow this way. And then I changed my mind and I wanted to do cash flow this way. And I thought this would be that's what I hear, all of these versions of you. Would that be an accurate summation?
Yeah, so a lot of that is just organic growth as an investor and figuring out doing the best you can with the resources that you have at each step of the way. And when you have no money, it's pretty, obscene to say, well, go be a private lender if you have no money. So that makes, you've got to use leverage. You've got to use creativity. You've got to use sweat equity. You got to have to find ways to add value to the marketplace that doesn't require your own capital. But, at a certain point, I really love at the beginning of the month, I press the ACH collect button on our bank account, and whoop, we just suck out money out of every borrower's account who's, signed up for ACH payment on our program. And that is the most hassle-free investment you could possibly imagine, is making a long-term, well-secured real estate note. And it's a great sleep at night, right? I mean, if the borrowers pay, I'm happy. If they don't pay, I've got compassion because I know there's a family living in that home that may not have a home in the future. But we make loans that are affordable. We qualify borrowers to make sure that they can afford the payment. And one of our big underwriting criteria is that even at a high rate of interest, 10% usually, and even at a 10% interest rate, the borrower's PITI is the same as what it would cost to rent that same property.
Oh, wow.
And so we're looking at a situation where there's no motivation for that borrower to default because they've got to live somewhere and they're going to pay the same payment to rent the house across the street. So we're really trying to set our borrowers up for success. And the vast majority of the loans do. The borrowers pay. So we talk a lot about the foreclosure side of lending and understanding the values, so that if you have to foreclose, the reality is, across the board in America, 98% of mortgages are paid on time, or paid as agreed, I should say, and 2% wind up in foreclosure.
Right.
And amazingly, in the private world, in private mortgages, you would think that the foreclosure rate would go up, but amazingly, the rate of foreclosure in private mortgages, specifically in the markets where we're targeting, Dallas-Fort Worth, I talked to our mortgage note servicer who's managing hundreds of millions of dollars of private mortgages, and her default rate across hundreds of millions of dollars is 0.5%.
That's awesome.
It's 25%. Or 75% lower than the national average, where you include all these Fannie Mae. And the reason is, if you're going to go get an FHA loan and you got 3.5% down and you can fog a mirror, well, there's not a whole lot that's keeping that borrower from default. But if you're a borrower and you put 25% down on your loan, on your property, you're not going to default, because the worst case scenario, you lose your job, you can't afford the payment. You just sell the property and maybe you get a little bit of money back, but you've got equity. You're not going to just give that equity to the marketplace. You're going to figure out a way to either make your payment or to sell that property to pay that lender back.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, here's something I want to make sure that there are a number of types of investors and people and entrepreneurs listening right now, David. And you said a couple of things that may have left some of them behind wondering, what does that mean, and why was that impressive, or why did Jay go, wow, that's good? You mentioned very specifically, I believe the exact words you said, their PITI was the same as if they had to go rent a property. Could you just for a small moment break down PITI for those who may not know, and understand that the significant business advantage I think that gives you in any marketplace, let alone, Dallas, where you guys are doing, but help them understand why that's a strategic and very important business advantage.
Oh, thank you. So PITI is an acronym for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And each month, when a borrower borrows money from our company, or we help an investor make a loan, that borrower is paying a payment for their principal and interest, which is the property of the lender. The lender gets that money. And then the taxes and insurance are collected monthly by the mortgage servicing company. And then they pay for the taxes and insurance for the benefit of the borrower when they're due. And that's a great protection for the lender, because if the borrower doesn't pay the taxes, well, the lender is going to eventually, suck it up and have to pay the taxes. And the same with the insurance. The insurance is there to protect the borrower, but more importantly, in the eyes of the lender, that insurance is there to protect the lender. So if there's a fire, the insurance company pays the lender who's named additionally insured on that insurance policy. And in a marketplace like Dallas, where let's say it's $100,000 property and that property rents for $1,000 a month, and we can do a $75,000 loan on that property that maybe it is a 10% interest rate and a 15-year loan amortization. After the borrower pays their principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, it's going to be about $1,000 on that same house. And so it's a great issue for affordability because we know the borrowers are looking at that loan, and they don't really focus on rate. They focus on payment. They say, I could afford $1,000 a month. And in fact, I was paying $1,000 a month to live next door. The only thing I need to own this property for the same payment is a down payment. They need basically a security deposit. But when you have a tenant, your tenant's going to put up, 1, maybe 2 months rent for security deposit.
Right.
When they're an owner, they're going to put up 2 years worth of payments for their security deposit.
Right.
That puts me as a lender in a much more secure position. As a landlord, I've never had a tenant not pay me, and I've gotten excited about that.
I can't imagine that any landlord ever got excited about a tenant not paying. So all I'm going to say is, yes, I understand exactly where you're coming from. So basically what you're saying is that there's many ways to create cash flow. You've ultimately have graduated to the point of doing it through lending. Okay, you've heard me say it before. I'm going to remind you because this episode it makes sense. You and I, we cannot out-earn our personal growth. Period. As you going through your career, beginning to be a person who's producing cash flow, building assets, online, offline, real estate, whatever it is that you've decided to do, you must make an investment in you continuously in order to be able to grow your income. I'm telling you, emotional intelligence is high on that scale, and that comes a lot from personal development. Anyway, if you want to get more information, if this is one of your first times or you just haven't done it yet, why don't you grab a PDF copy of my book, Cashflow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. You can do it right now. Just send a text message to 72000. Again, that's 72,000. Text keyword is book. So text the word book to 72,000 and I will send you a link and you'll be able to go ahead and download the book and get reading and learn a bit more about the personal development, the journey that I've been on and that we've been documenting, and that most importantly, you can follow so that you can begin to duplicate yourself too. Now, let's get back to David and see what other ways he may have grown recently.
Yeah, and I love lending. And, I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, that when a borrower doesn't pay their mortgage payment, I get excited, because that's not really true. I've got a big heart for helping families succeed. But from the eyes of, from my investor hat on, it doesn't bother me one bit. I don't miss a moment of sleep from an investor standpoint when a borrower doesn't make their mortgage payment, because I know there's so much equity in that property protecting our investment that even after the cost of foreclosure, which in Texas, we're deliberately lending in Texas because property values are going up and the laws are very friendly to lenders. And the time to foreclose in Texas, it's about $1,000 in about 120 days. And you can foreclose in Texas. Some states like Florida, it might take you 2, maybe 3 years to foreclose, and you might spend $6,000 or $7,000 or more to foreclose in some states.
Yes, and we won't mention California in that list at all because it would be very depressing for some of you. Now, you've also mentioned yourself as a market cycle investor. For those who are maybe not as familiar with the term, give us an understanding of what you mean by that, and most importantly, what's a market cycle?
So a market cycle is just the organic movement of markets where prices go up and prices go down relative to rents. And so that ratio between rents and purchase prices is primarily what I'm concerned about as an investor because, prices go up, prices go down, whatever. But as long as that ratio is there, where people can afford the properties and the ratio between the cost to own and the cost to rent is favorable to buy, then you buy. But at certain times in the market cycle, it's better to be a buyer than it is to be a seller. For example, in 2009, 2010, the news was full of foreclosure, and you pretty much could throw a dart at the MLS listings and pick a property that was going to be a winner, and you could write an offer, and you probably were the only offer on that property in 2009.
Yeah.
Here we are in 2015, and things are selling multiple offers above ask in short days on market, and the ratio between incomes and home prices, I'm kind of scratching my head. I don't see that people can afford the housing that they're buying. So I like to look at the ratio between the median income and the median home price. And I say, could this person with the median income afford the median home? And at this point in the market cycle, in many of the major metros, many of the high cost metros, I should say,
Right.
the answer is no.
Yep.
The median wage earner cannot afford the median home. And the only reason this market is thriving or is still thriving is, number one, we just had a real estate boom. So everyone who owned property is able to move up, right? Everyone's cashing out their equity and they're taking one step up with their equity. The other is we've had one of the largest run-ups in the stock market in recent history. And so people are able to cash their stock market out, especially in like the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, all those people who got in the tech industry who are getting options and their options did well, they cash them out, they buy property. They're not buying that property based on their income. They're buying the property based on a one-off event that the market gave them a gift of equity. And now I look for the market and I say, where's the greater fool who's going to come in behind that person to buy the property after the first fool's already, bought all they're going to buy?
Yep. And let's be clear, because you said a couple of things that I think is interesting, because I know there's a number of people listening from a number of different markets. You specified high cost markets. You specified the median incomes, median housing prices. Is there any particular and if you're wondering, you're in a high cost market, just know that if your rent is for one bedrooms in the 4 digits, that's you. So it's really, really easy to figure out where a lot of those are. In fact, if you look up in the sky most days and there's sunshine, it's probably you. Those are very, very easy determining factors that you can figure out. Is that my market? Yes, it is. If cows are nearby, it's probably not you. These are things to be concerned with. But I'm curious to know, is there a particular, because rent to price ratio is one of my first qualifiers too. I'm always measuring it. I'm always looking at it. It's the quickest indicator I can get in any marketplace. And just for those of you out there, I know in UK, Europe, Australia, etc., it applies there too. Even though you're financing or gearing, whichever word makes better sense for you, is different. The ratios still tell a very similar story. So I'm curious to know, David, is there a specific ratio that you're looking for, either on a percentage basis of some kind, that you use as the cutoff point that says, you know what, this is not the place to buy?
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote a very extensive blog article called "How to Predict Real Estate Prices," and it got some legs under it. A lot of people, reposted that in some prominent places. And in that article, I'm talking about the ratio that if you look at the net operating income divided by the purchase price, that gives you the capitalization rate or the cap rate. And one of the core philosophies of hassle-free cash flow investing is you want your interest rate to be at least 1 point, ideally 2 points below your cap rate. And so if interest rates, for investors are 5, then I need my cap rate to be 6 or 7 to justify a purchase. So, because Jay, if you could borrow money at 5% and invest it at 6%, how much do you want to borrow?
As far as the Excel column will let me.
Exactly. Now let's flip that. Let's say you could borrow at 6 and invest at 5. How much do you want to borrow?
I will lend you all you want.
Exactly. None. You don't want to. So when I'm looking at a lot of markets, the cap rates are inversed, right? Many times, like for example, the San Francisco Bay Area.
Sunshine. I'm just letting people know. Sunshine.
Sunshine.
They can remember. Go ahead.
Apartment buildings trading at a 3 cap, and I know that investor borrowed the money at 5%. It doesn't make any sense, right? That they are buying with leverage. And then the other ratio that I'm really looking for is the ratio between median income and median home price. And to give you, just for teaching points, I'm going to use very round numbers. But let's say that the median home price in San Francisco is $1 million, and the median income is $100,000. Someone's using 10 years of salary to purchase a home. I don't think that's affordable. Then you look at a market like Dallas, Texas, and the median income might only be $50,000, but the median home price is only $150,000 in that same area. Someone's only using 3 years of salary to buy that home, and it's a lot more affordable. So when I look at San Francisco, I think there's no way that based on incomes that home prices could go anywhere but down. And then I look at Dallas and I say, I don't know if they're going to go up, but it doesn't make sense that they would go down because they're very affordable. There's prices respond to supply, demand, and capacity to pay. And there is no more capacity to pay in a high cost market like San Francisco. But I look at Dallas, there's plenty of capacity to pay. People are using only a very small amount of their income to pay for housing.
You do realize that someone listening to us right now in San Francisco said, I make the $100,000, but it's a condo that's the million, not the house.
Yeah, you're right.
So just keep that in mind, because it's actually not even buying the same kind of the same amount of real estate. And these are economic factors that are key for all of us to pay attention to, especially as you are going out there to use real estate as the asset that you're going to go out there to generate your cash flow. And again, I've often said, lenders are the smartest real estate investors on the planet. You want to do lots of borrowing, lots of owning property, and eventually become a lender, because that's the only thing that, in my opinion, can qualify you to actually understand how it all works. And you've managed to do that, which I think is impressive in a relatively short period of time. I'm curious to know, in all of the things that you've done so many and so varied. What's like on your horizon next? Like what is the new challenge, the new thing that has you excited?
Well, Jay, I'm very much excited about the cash flow that comes from owning mortgages, and I think that's a very powerful thing in this market cycle, because if prices decline, as a mortgage investor, I've got that borrower's down payment equity to protect my investment. So I'm very excited about that, because I see that where we are in the market cycle right now in 2015, it's fragile. And so I'm selling my equity positions to go buy in debt positions. And it's very much like in the stock market. When stock prices are high, then you sell stocks and you buy bonds. And when stock prices are low, you sell bonds and you go buy stocks. Right now, the real estate market is high. That's the equities. So I'm selling equities to go buy bonds. But what I'm really kind of passionate about on a personal level, and what I think makes sense in a volatile economy, is farmland. Right. And I don't necessarily...
Hold on. Say that again, because somebody was washing dishes, their kid screamed, or they tripped on the treadmill, and they didn't hear. And I really, really want them to hear the word you just said.
Farmland.
Exactly. It's still real estate, but now we're going to be talking about cows, chickens, pigs?
That is so awesome. So when you are investing in farmland as a third party, there really is not very attractive yields. I mean, we're talking about cap rates down in the 3, 4, 5% cap rates. But for me, The way that I look at farmland in my portfolio is its preservation of equity. It's something
Got it.
that even in volatile times, it's going to just preserve value and produce a nominal yield. So it kind of is reserved in that part of my portfolio like gold and silver.
Right.
You
That's
know,
exactly what I was thinking. When you said that, I was actually thinking that's the role it was playing. But okay, this is good. I like it.
yeah. So I love gold and silver, but it doesn't pay me dividends, right? When I own
Well, you can't
farm.
eat it. No chickens, no grass. I get you. I get you. I smell what you're stepping in. This is cool.
Yeah, yeah. So, I definitely think, it depends on where you are as an investor. And we don't sell farmland. I'm just excited to share, what I'm doing as an investor and part of my growth. But timber, we're buying timberland and the trees grow. And when those trees are mature, you can harvest them and sell them for an inflation adjusted price. And we're buying pasture land where sheep and cows grow.
Oh,
And
how long does it take for a tree to grow to become harvestable?
So the commercial life cycle is about 30 years. So from the time that you plant a seedling, they're already a couple years old when you plant them, but when you're planting a seedling, it's about 30 years for Douglas fir to become commercially harvestable. So what you do is you just work in rotation, right? So you're always planting and harvesting, and so there's always inputs and outputs. And it's a generational crop, right? It's a way to leave an asset to a future generation that they can't just squander away, right? If you leave your heirs a whole bunch of cash, well, good luck. That's gone, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I like this. This is definitely we'll call this a long-term play.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I don't know what's happening in global economics, but I sure try to pay attention to it. And I see a lot of a turmoil in the world. And the ability to own a piece of land that's producing food, I don't see that you can go wrong with that. I mean, you're probably not going to get rich off that, but I buy car insurance, I buy life insurance, I buy fire insurance. I'm not planning on my house burning down tomorrow, but I sure own fire insurance in case that happens. So owning a farm is a little bit, in a prepper standpoint, I mean, it's a little bit of financial economic collapse insurance because there's a piece of ground that's producing food, and that food allows me to participate in the economy where my other investments might not be doing well.
I just listening to you talk, there's a business opportunity for the person who can somehow develop food insurance in some way, shape, or form. But that's more or less what you're saying. It just it's just a longer term approach. It's a different way of looking at it. I don't suspect it's going to become the majority part of your portfolio, but nonetheless, I can't fault it. I totally agree with it because if you never know, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's not promised. And more importantly, it sounds like it's actually something you are just interested in and want to explore.
Oh, definitely. It's a quality of life investment more than a business. It's just you work hard for your money. And once you've got financial independence, well, what are you doing to create meaning in your life? And how are you going to pass that level of meaning onto future generations? And I'm a father. I've got a 6.5-year-old son. And, we live in I want him to grow up in a farm environment. And right now in my real estate business and my mortgage business, there's not a whole lot of meaningful things my son can do in my business.
Yes. I'm having the same challenge, by the way. I'm having the same challenge. One of the things that I was telling everybody recently on one of our members only webinars was one of my frustrations is that my 3 youngest children, they think that you ask them today, what does daddy do? And they go, daddy records. They think daddy does podcasts. That's it. They don't see the work when I get on the plane or go visit the grounds and work with the crews they just don't see it. And I've been devising ways to start buying some assets, commercial stuff closer to home. So even if it's triple net, Dave, now hear this. This is what I've been tempted to go, even if it's triple net, I think I'm still going to go make them clean the parking lot just because that way they can touch it. They can see it. They can know that going to Disneyland wasn't actually free.
Yeah, that is so true. I work with my son in our business, and one of the things he does is just the shredding in our office, and he's
Well, that's a start.
yeah, it's a start. But we also helped my son create some marketing videos for our company, and we pay our son, and when he shreds, we pay him about
Nice.
a dollar an hour, and that's about the value that he's creating for our company.
Right.
Is a shredder. But when he did a marketing video for our company, and it came out awesome. And he's holding one of his toys, and he says, "My favorite website's hassle-free-cashflowinvesting.com," and it's adorable. And we put that as some intro outro in our training videos, and we paid him $5,000 for that modeling appearance, and he knows that. And he knows. I mean, he's pretty good at math for being almost 7, and he knows the difference between when he shreds, he makes $1 an hour, and when he does a marketing video, he got $5,000 for that modeling appearance. And so he's always wanting to do things that create higher value, and
I like it.
that was a very powerful message for him. And so we do talk about in our business, like, well, this is what this person in our company does, and this is how much they get paid. And this person does something that's more specialized, and they get paid more. And then mommy and daddy are the owners of the company, and they get this much money. And he's like, well, I want to be the owner.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
We also give him chances to use his money. And so it's really powerful that even at 6 years old, that if he wants something specific, or even if hey, let's take the family out for ice cream, we let him pay. Like, he gets to use his own money for something like that. We're buying a farm to live on, and he said, "Dad, I know you and Mom are working so hard to save up the money for this farm, and I'd like to contribute. And I've got $6. Would my $6 be helpful to buying this, multi-million-dollar farm?" And we said, "Yes, absolutely. Your $6 is meaningful," and we put it into our cash flow spreadsheet. Here is the $6 from our son, and he just gets to feel like he's contributing. And so anyway, I think that's important. Let your kids work, and then let your kids spend the money and invest the money, so that they really understand both sides, the income and the expense side of that column.
Agreed. Now, I know that there's been a number of individuals who have been listening this far and are like, I want to know more about this David guy, and I want to understand a little bit more about what he's got going on. Could you share with us what's going to be the best way for any of us to catch up with you, find out, just tell us how to stalk you online, guy?
Yeah, that's awesome. So I have a blog, hassle-free CashFlowInvesting.com, and I very feel humbled that my blog's been named a number of times as one of the top 100 real estate blogs in America. And there's a wealth of information there at hassle-free-CashFlowInvesting.com. All the training there is free. There's a whole bunch of ebooks there, and probably, I'm going to guess, over 100 hours of training videos that you can watch for free on our website and our YouTube channel. And really would like to encourage our listeners today to download a free report. And it's called Secrets of Hassle-Free Cashflow Lending. And if you just go to my website, hassle-free-cashflowinvesting.com, and you find the ebook section, it's probably the first ebook up there, Secrets of Hassle-Free Cashflow Lending, and really just demystifies the nuts and bolts of how to be a private lender. And you could look at it from the standpoint of how to be a lender, or if you don't have any money to lend, you can also look at that as a primer of how to be a borrower of private capital as well.
Excellent. Now, before we finish, there's a question that I want to ask, because I know that listening, there's a number of people who have varying ideas of business, varying, ideas that maybe they're an inventor. They want to bring something to market. They've got maybe they're buying a franchise, laundromat, ATM. I don't know. There's so many choices. Obviously, you and I enjoy the challenges as well as the rewards that come with real estate investing. But as they make this transition, as they go out there to become the bigger, better, badder entrepreneur that's inside them, there's that constant companion, that little we'll call it that little voice, that voice that says things that aren't always supportive, and although sometimes they are, but at the same time, anytime we're endeavoring to do something new, that voice is in the background asking us, can I really do this? Or is that really you? Is this really going to work? Oh, you tried that before. Are you sure you're going to do this again? That voice. And I know it's a voice you've heard. I know it's a voice you've dealt with in various different ways and times. What I would love for you to share is, what would you say to the person who has that voice in the back of their head right now?
Jay, it's important to understand that everyone has that voice. And even if you're trying to do it, no matter how many real estate deals you've done, you run into your maximum core competency. And so I might look at a $5 million deal and say, oh, okay, I can do that. And someone else might say, no way, that I could never do something that big. And then I'll look at a $100 million deal and think, oh, wow. Right, that's outside my comfort zone. Like, how do I pull off a deal that's large? Getting through that, I think it's important to surround yourself with positive people and to protect yourself from negative people and negative news. I think that the television, especially television news, where you're not controlling the programming coming in, it just feeds you whatever it wants to feed you, I think is really toxic, right? If you're going to consume programming, get it off of Roku or YouTube or something where you mindfully choose what you're gonna watch. There's a great song, and it's the theme song to one of the Muppet movies.
Okay.
And it's called something like "Life's a Happy Song." So everyone just go to YouTube, Google "Life's a Happy Song" Muppet theme song, and memorize that lyrics to the song. And it's really about abundance, that you have everything that you need. And I really teach that the first level of financial goals is security. If you don't have enough money to eat and keep yourself warm, nothing else matters, right? You're going to do anything that you need to do to have financial security. So stop dreaming big. Just dream about security. Get yourself secure, right? So that you don't have to worry about that, where you're going to eat and how you're going to stay warm, and how you're going to get yourself medical care. For most people, that's a job, right? So once you've got financial security taken care of, everything else, I always just say, well, what's the worst thing that could happen to me, right? Okay, I've got financial security dialed in, which is I can go work at Starbucks. That's my worst case, right? I actually made a list one time when I was having a really hard time financially. I made a list and I came up with 365 people that I know that would let me sleep on their couch for one night. And I was feeling really low, and then once I made that list of 365 people, hey, Jay, you and I don't hang out a lot, but would you let me sleep on your couch for one night?
Sure. Come on.
Yeah. So now Jay's on my list of 365 people. You probably wouldn't let me move in, for a couple months. That'd be a little imposing. But once I made that list, I knew no matter what my financial situation was, I'd never be homeless or hungry, because I had a social network of people that I could just go, from couch to couch to couch. And that didn't ever come to fruition. But that gave me a backstop where I knew no matter what I did in my investing career, I was never going to miss a meal. I'd never go cold or hungry, because I had that that social network to support me, right? So then the next level is, how do you create a life of abundance? And that's what most people are working for, is how do you get enough financial abundance? And to me, I define that. A lot of people think abundance means they can have a private jet and a limo and the fancy. And I'll just tell you, the fancy stuff doesn't really buy you happiness. To me, financial abundance means I can go into Costco, or I can go into Target. I can buy anything I want at Target and not even look at the price tag. And to me, that's abundance, right? I don't need a yacht. I don't need a jet. I just want to be able to go into the grocery store, buy what I'm hungry for rather than what the price tag says.
Agreed.
Then once you have abundance, it's how do you live a life of significance? And for me, significance is setting up the next generation. It's about helping people. I worked, as a small cog in a huge machine to do $100 million deals. And I don't know, it was good for my ego to start, but it really isn't very gratifying. And so now what I'm really, really passionate about is being part of someone's financial success story, that someone can call me on the phone for free and say, David, here's where I am. Here's where I want to go. If you were me, what would you do? And just give them some advice and some resources. And a very small percentage of the people that I talk to on the phone eventually, become clients, right? They decide that they want to buy private mortgages, or they want to be a hard money lender, and that's one of the business units that we that produces income for my family. So anyway, create security, then work for abundance, and then work for a life of financial significance, which is really, to me, it's getting back to the land, knowing where my food comes from, being a good father, being out in nature, breathing clean air, enjoying stars at night, and being of service to as many people as I can.
Awesome. I want to take a moment and just say thank you for taking the time, investing the time that you have here with us at the Cashflow Diary. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. You know that you've heard some things that make perfect sense to you today. So what does that mean? That means you probably should go over to hassle-free cash flow investing. At worst, what's going to happen? You're going to learn. You're going to get smarter. You're going to walk away with more information. And let's not forget probably the two most important things you have learned on this particular episode. One, before you ask the neighbor if you can mow their yard or get paid for mowing their yard, just go ahead and do it first, then ask them for money later. And then make sure you look up the Muppets, because clearly they've got great theme music. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I definitely look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.